Okay, so hi everyone. New haircut. Yes, thank you. I don't know if you're talking to me or to Petri. Welcome everybody. This is our third panel. We will be talking about estimation or no estimation. So that is the topic that a couple of you mentioned that it will be nice to talk about. Even on our previous panels, we had that questions coming up. So we are here to talk about it, to see if it's, why is it good, why is it maybe challenging, or maybe we should do some other things. So I wanted to introduce you to our panelists today. Today we will be talking to Sonya. She is founder and CEO of Nave. We will be mentioning that in our panel. We have Petri, you know him. He is our certified Scrum trainer, and Zoran, I believe you also know him. He is Agile trainer and coach here. Just to mention how we do this, so basically you have a chat where you can ask all the questions you want. We all see the questions. So while we go through our topic, we will be looking at your questions, answering them. You did see that we have some kind of, I will not call it agenda, but the topics that we would like to cover. So we will go by them, ask whenever you feel like to, so we can jump on to your question. We were talking now and we mentioned that you should maybe click on the gallery view. If you see all four of us, that's good. If you see just one of us, then maybe click on the gallery view so you have a better view of the whole panel. I hope that you will enjoy this, and let's start talking, everybody. So estimations. I would like to first maybe talk about, because even now when we talked a couple of minutes ago, we did have some, let's say, different, maybe not different opinions, but different views of what is estimation. So how would you describe an estimation? What is estimation to you? I would also like for other people to involve, maybe just write on chat, what is estimation to them? So maybe we can start with, I don't know, who wants to start first? How do they see the estimation? What is it?
Oh, I can start.
Yeah.
Right, so for me, estimation is giving the answer of the question, when will this be done? So, and the problem is rooted in the expectation of having a single certain delivery date as an answer. And people tend to provide it. Fact is, people feel more comfortable being wrong than uncertain. And I would like to share with you a study that I've been looking into lately. The fact is that the fear of uncertainty is a cultural problem. The study is conducted by the professor Gert Hofstede. It's called the Cultural Dimensions Theory, and it observes how values are influenced by national culture. He defines 6 dimensions of national culture, one being the uncertainty avoidance index. So the index is scaled from 1 to 100. The higher the index, the more uncomfortable to uncertainty you are as a society. And countries exhibiting strong uncertainty avoidance index maintain quite rigid codes of belief and behavior, and they're totally intolerant of unorthodox ideas. In fact, Serbia scores 92 on this dimension, one of the highest scores ever. And thus you guys have a very high preference for avoiding uncertainty. Let me share the study with you. I'm going to just send the link in the chat so everyone can see. Okay, here it is. So we'd rather provide...
Just send it, sorry, just send it to, click on the all panelists and attendees, because, yeah, so people can get it.
Here it is. Yeah. So we'd rather provide a single certain delivery date that's wrong then remain uncertain. So how can we answer that question? How can we answer the question, when will this be done?
Yeah.
What are the approaches to come up with an accurate future predictions? What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
Well, we have an hour and a half to talk about that, and I think a lot of things will still be left unsaid. I'm going to generalize on what Sonya said. To me, estimation is generally any attempt to try to see into the future in terms of cost or effort. And that includes in all kinds of different ways of doing estimation or different purposes for it, different approaches. Yeah, it's part of, we do have an underlying need. I mean, whenever we make choices in life and when we make choices in business work, we do need to understand which of our choices are worth doing, or what are the consequences of choices we might have to do or we might choose from as alternatives. And we often talk about return on investment. That is optimizing the gains that we receive from some effort that we spend into something. And we have to often choose between different alternatives. Estimation in generally is part of that equation. It tries to understand the consequences of the cost of things, and then there should be the value, and the ratio of the value and the cost should lead to good business decisions. And we need that information and that general perception of which of our possible options and alternatives and actions are worth doing, which ones are not. And so estimation, therefore, is part of that larger equation in all the different ways in which we do it.
Yeah, Zoran, how do you see the estimation? And I will get back to you, Petri, just with one thing that you said.
Okay, so I'll take some maybe orthodox approach in this scenario. Yeah, for me, estimates are waste. Estimation as a process can be useful because in some situation helps team dry out hidden assumptions about task requirements and things they need to develop. For me, estimate is pure wild guess. I call this guesstimate because you are taking lots of kind of assumptions about certain things, and you try to present software engineering as a more deterministic the work. Then it's actually opposite of that. One thing for sure is that things will go wrong when you do things. Yeah. However, sometimes you need to give answer on the question when I will get when you will get this job done. Yeah. So if you have some data and some history and you have teams who work together for a long time, you certainly can use some historical data. But if you don't, in that case, to be able to answer this, you need to do some form of estimation. However, there is a lots of at the moment lots of push for this concept of no estimate, which is based on things that just let me do the work and let me focus on the most important stuff and let me deliver this to you. And as we're developing this, we will work together toward achieving the things which are best for you. And that works for me fine when you have a product development, when you have your own product or you're developing some kind of product. But if you work in outsourcing industry, and that's why I'm thinking this data which Sonya shows, I don't think so we have this privilege to play around with this, you know, because maybe we participate in some kind of tender, we're competing with some competitors about delivery dates, cost, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So in some way or form, you need to do some kind of projections. Yeah. But as you can see, I'm not a big fan of estimation because I haven't seen many projects successful and deliver on the date that originally was estimated based. So some people say the waste. I almost agree with that, but process of estimation can be useful for people better understand the requirement because it provokes some useful discussion.
Yeah, you mentioned outsourcing, and if we have our own product, there is a difference. So maybe we created some poll just to see for our attendees, do they work, let's say, in an outsourced company or have their own product or service, or maybe both. So I will be launching the poll now just to see the people who are listening to this, in which kind of organization they work. So maybe they see the difference also between if we can use estimates or not in those ways. So I will be launching the poll now. So we assume that the majority of Serbia is, let's say, outsourced, but let's see how things are here with our attendees. So you should be seeing the poll on your screen. I will be sharing the results just to collect some more votes. Votes are still coming. Few seconds. It's not a tough question. We have bigger questions for you prepared. Okay, I will be ending the polling now and sharing the results. So I don't know if I just confirm you see this, right? The
Yep.
results. Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the situation now in our group. So most of you are working both. So maybe that's even good, because then you can know if you can use some of the things that we are talking or not on outsourced projects or the projects that you create, service product or whatever. Cool.
I think one question which kind of adds to this question about estimation is the why developers don't like estimations. Yeah, that's maybe a question which we should cover as well, because you know, obviously we all agree that we need to do something about projection. Yeah, but the question is why many developers are against estimations. What's the consequence of these estimations?
Do we want to start with that? Because I have a way of looking at that I could share.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
So when I talk about, I mean, we need planning. We need thinking forward so that we schedule the work that we do so that we can reach meaningful goals. We need that work in organizations. We might call it release planning. We might call it whatever we like. But in that work, there are three basic concepts that get confused and abused. And the concepts are estimate, target, and commitment. Those are critically important all things. So those factors always exist in plans, but we need to separate them to make sense of them. So estimate is the unbiased. Okay, so nothing can be unbiased by human beings, but unless we have data, but we have no estimates and things like that. But it's the estimate. What is the honest belief what this will take, given what our assumptions about what we need to do? Target is what would we like to achieve at what time. So that's an aspiration, that's a hope. And then there's a commitment, is a promise of some kind about something. And Zoran, to your original point, I think personally, the biggest, not just fear, because it's actually closer to a fact. People abuse estimates, treating them as commitments. And because estimates change all the time. Estimates are supposed to change as your knowledge increases, but commitments don't necessarily change nearly as often. We might have to become innovative. Now, I like to use a target as well as a third dimension. We might say, we estimate this thing will take 6 months to do. Commitment, we will deliver it in those 6 months. Our target is still less than that. We hope to deliver in 4 months or so, or that it's an MVP or so. So I think the abuse on these different terms leads to why developers, because they deal with estimates and they try to estimate honestly, and they know that these change, but as soon as they say the number, it becomes a commitment to people outside the team. So they get abused by that. That's one view, I'm sure.
Okay, so one way of looking at that. There is another situation which I came across very often, is that someone else do estimation for the team, because the companies usually say, okay, I'm not going to waste developers' time to estimate things. I'll find someone like technical lead, team lead, whoever, and he will estimate for the team. And when he estimates for that team, we will add the buffer, multiply by how many numbers, whatever. So we got this commitment, and we come and say, okay, we will deliver this in 6 months, tough. And that often happens, you know.
Yeah.
The second point is that you don't need to have commitment based on estimations. You can do commitment based on the historical data if you have. And I think that's when I'm very much against estimation using in every possible situation, because it's still guesstimate. It's still, however, how much you put a buffer on it, it's still cone uncertainty is huge. And if you draw a contract on that and you take people responsible for that, and even worse, after that you call them and try to ask them to explain why they're late, guess what? People will add more and more buffer in estimation, and you will add then more buffer in commitment, and all this kind of goes completely wild. I have a situation that the people kind of give some crazy estimation, and everyone wonder what's going on there, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to emphasize, I don't mean commitment is always a date. Commitment can be a scope target. We commit to delivering this. We don't know when, but we will. Or it could be just, we'll do our best. We will promise we'll do our best, be as smart as we possibly can to deliver something. So commitments can be more than just a number.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I agree with both of you guys. I also believe that there are two perspectives when it comes to why developers, they really hate to make any future predictions. And the first is indeed that they really, when they make a commitment, when they make a promise and they break it, they are being punished when they break it. And this is really, really wrong. First, because commitments are promises. They are not promises, they are goals, they are directions. And second, because we need to learn from the failures. We need to see what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and then we need to make the effort to change something in order to make sure that we're going to do it right the next time. And when you start judging people because they're breaking their commitments, they will start to cheat the system. They will either cut from the quality, or they will start hiding problems, issues that they found, because they won't have the time to take care of it. And when your workers start cheating the system, then you have much bigger problem than breaking a certain commitment. And the second perspective, is that developers really see the process of estimating as a waste. They come with the assumption that they want to deliver value as soon as possible. They want to do their job in the most efficient manner possible. And when we ask them to spend their time on whatever approach they use, to put some numbers in place, they see that as a waste. They see that as, I just want to do my job. And I probably, that's the reason why within our organization we're using forecasts just to make a just to explain what I mean by this, forecasts are future predictions based on our past performance data. They come as a range of either days or dates and the probabilities that come with each date. So for example, we have one item of a certain type. We look back in time, for example, let's say the past 3 months. We see what was the past performance data for that specific type of task. For example, for expedites, I know that 30% of our work needed 1 day to go live with any expedite. 50%, in the 50% of the cases, we needed 2 days, and 85% of the cases, we needed 3 days. Having that past data in place, we know that there is an 85% chance to deliver any expedite work within 3 days, in less than 3 days. And we use tools in order to make that prediction. So we have a range. We have 1 day, 2 days, 3 days with a certainty, with 30%, 50%, and 85%. And we either go with the 85% if our customers are not comfortable with uncertainty, as you are guys, or we just go with the certain range and ask, which is the probability you feel good about? Do you want us to commit to 1 day with a 50% certainty, so we either do it or not? Or do you feel more comfortable to go with 85% certainty that we're going to deliver that assignment within 3 days?
And that is the difference between estimation and forecast. You said in estimation that, and I think it's misusage of estimation, that people then do consider it as commitments. And then if we say maybe we estimate something, it's considered as a commitment, and then the managers, as you said, can use it against the developers when we say why do they do not like. But when you look at the forecasting, does those things happen? So we use some data and then we say, okay, according to data, we would need, I don't know, 10 days to do this stuff. And do also managers or whoever is looking at what has been done also see that as commitments, or do they see it, okay, it was a forecast, but maybe it didn't happen like we forecast it?
Well, the thing is that we're talking about goals. And when we use data tools to come up with a certain commitment, it's not about team or individual commitment anymore. It's about how stable our workflow is. So we don't talk about individuals anymore. We don't judge individuals or teams. We judge our system. We judge our workflow. We judge our process. We judge the stability of our process. We judge, are we capable to balance demand and capacity? Can we work on the amount of tasks that our team can handle at the same time? Is it possible that we don't push more work and interrupt the work that is still in progress? So at the moment that we start using this approach and we start collecting data and give the transparency, visualizing all the work and start noticing all the issues that come out of it, then the mindset is changing. Our mindset is changing. We don't keep certain people accountable, because if you have a team of 5 people and the people at the front are super efficient and super fast, and the people in the middle are not, you don't deliver value. The main goal is to deliver value. And
is estimation delivering value?
No, estimation is waste, as I said.
And can it maybe let's say push people to get some value out of?
No, it cannot. This is the main problem with estimation. Estimation is not purpose of itself. We need to go back. I just posted there in a chat one of the better definition of estimates in forecasting, which I copy from Sonya, by the way. So it's the question is why we're using estimation? What's the purpose of that? To get the answer on the date. That's the main reason why we're using it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two things for me, in my experience, strange here. One, we are talking via Agile, okay? And Agile means delivering the best value for client. It doesn't mean delivering the original plan. It means changing that plan if it's necessary and delivering better stuff, okay? With this commitment and estimation, we actually pretending we are Agile, but actually we are sticking to that date and that backlog and that plan. And, and based on that, we are how Agile we are. That's number one. And number two, what I found interesting about what Sonya was saying, managers don't believe in data. It's a very interesting. They rather believe in someone guesstimating things than if you present them tools like Monte Carlo, for example, something like that, yeah, or some kind of throughput which you calculate based on data. They always question how this tool knows. If you don't estimate, how they know how much you can deliver and that kind of thing. And I found this amazing, because if you have a historical data, that's when forecasting absolutely 100%. That's called yesterday weather, by the way, technique. That should work definitely, yeah, much better. But if you don't have data, that's a key. I think Petri was saying that's a key. What you do, you start guesstimating again, up to the point when you start getting real data and you can revisit your delivery date. And that's why we talk about range and this kind of thing. But the question is, some client doesn't like range. They want to hear date, because what they want you take you responsible that, and in some way or form punish you if you're late and that kind of thing. And this is, I understand that, but why are we talking about Agile? That's what I don't understand.
So if, I haven't really before used the words forecast and estimate as, to me, there's a lot of similarity. I haven't specific, but now that I think of it, I would, say the difference between the two is that estimate is an attempt to try to guess what does this specific item take. Whereas a forecast is more like a statistical saying, well, this is what normally happens. This is the typical scenario, and with these probabilities, you'll get this. But we are not trying to tell or guess how long will this specific item take. We just say it will likely fall in this range of probable outcomes. We'll just try to do it as quickly as possibly can, and that's what you can expect. So in one, we're trying to, and I repeat, one we're trying to estimate a given duration, and the other one is just showing the data what they usually take, without making commitment on that one, or making a promise or even a guess on that specific item. And I think that makes a lot of sense as a distinction between these two things. But it does assume, like Zoran, you said, that that the future is like the past. And that this item is one in many of a similar group of items that the data is comprised of. And then that's reliable. Okay.
I think one thing which we all forget, when people talk about Scrum and Agile, they talk about cross-functional, self-organizing, long-living teams who are together, who has history, who has, being to this forming, storming, norming, performing, who from that team you can get this data which Sonya was talking before, and I know it's not easy when you start new, but to be honest, I don't think so. Every project is new, and if you can use your data, if you can't, you need to start with something. I'm completely aware that some clients are unreasonable, then they want commitments and things, but let's not forget what's Agile all about. I think for me that's main thing here. We want to deliver best value for our client, and that usually means sometimes different than what originally client wanted, because let's not forget, sometimes client doesn't know what they want. Sometimes they don't know how to articulate very well. Sometimes we don't understand what they're saying. Sometimes even if we understand, we completely miss the point. And I think
Now,
that's very important.
can I go back one step?
Yep.
Because there is what I call a planning strategy. There's different strategies based on how we plan projects, and they are contextual. Sometimes date is the relevant thing. Date is a crucial importance. Like if we need to deliver something before some law comes into effect, or before a market window closes, or Christmas comes. So then sometimes dates are the driving force. Sometimes date is not a driving force. Sometimes budget is. And we need to manage the backlog in different ways, and we need to also treat estimation with a different purpose or different approach when the budget is the issue. Sometimes it's features. It doesn't matter really how long it will take, but we need specific things so that we can use this thing. And the last one that I usually think of as a fourth option is ROI driven, which is something that a lot of maintenance teams do. Like they have this continuous flow of work that keeps coming and coming, and they need to work in priority order. So they can calculate the value of the proposals and the cost of proposals and work in the descending order of value, like cost of delay. And so depending on what is the context, also estimation plays a different role. If we have a date driven, then the date is the relevant thing. It's a business criteria. This work has no value whatsoever if it's not done by Christmas. And then the date has to be addressed in some way, but maybe the features can be flexible. So the focus should be prioritization instead of estimation. How do we know that we get the most valuable things done before the deadline hits? And estimation should play very little role, and action and prioritization should play a high role. If budget is an issue, then estimation might have a much higher role in the choice of which alternatives we choose, and that we choose cheap ones over expensive ones, and so on. If features are the priority, then again, estimation is used to project when we might be done, but that deadline will change based on what actually happens and what we learn as we go along. Again, I'm just saying, when we talk about estimation, that context also matters, because estimation for one person doesn't serve the same need as for another person, and therefore, it's easy to argue about estimation because we may think different context. But I just wanted to highlight without setting us in a given context.
Yeah, and of course there are definitely different, if it's fixed budget, fixed scope, fixed time, or something. Zoran, you mentioned that if we have the data, then we can use it to forecast the things and, okay, say the date to the client, because I see also questions here, what to say to the client. They want the date, not the range, not everything. So if we have the data, we can give them the date. What if we do not have the data? So what happens then? Because there are situations when we just do not have the data. So do we, okay, tell them we will collect the data, just give us time, or what do we do?
I mean, there are different school of thoughts here. Okay, one you just said, okay, just give us few sprints and we will let you know. Yeah, one with more precision, let's say, or more accuracy, should I say, when we will get. Of course, that's difficult because some clients insist on the dates at the beginning. Yeah, and you can do in that case more analysis up front. You can involve the team in the release planning, for example, what Petri was saying, and there, I mean, you can again, you need to estimate somehow. You can try see with the team, pick few requirements, see how much amount of work is there, what they think they can deliver in I don't know, iterations. Repeat that a few times and see what you get as a kind of, or either number of requirements or whatever, number of days, whatever, or points, whatever, and you can apply some kind of range. For example, if it's new team, obviously that buffer needs to be bigger. If it's non-team, you need to apply smaller. But for me, most important thing is that as soon as you do that, you need to start collecting data, so that after a few sprints, you can revisit that and provide transparently feedback. But don't forget, ultimately, what we want in the end of the day, we want to deliver value to client, yeah? And that doesn't mean always delivering everything, because not everything in the backlog is important. Not everything in the backlog. By the way, I agree with Petri. One thing is important that you prioritize your backlog based on value and cost and risks and all sorts of other things. But not every item there is equally important. There are a few items there who are very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start delivering that and ask client for feedback, you may get new things which are even more important to clients than something what's remained in a backlog. And that's called collaboration, and that's called being iterative incremental delivery, and that's called being in some way agile, you know, because you want together with the client have this value in the end of the day. And maybe even you finish earlier, you know, there are teams who finish things earlier saying, okay guys, we deliver most of your things what you want, there is a things remaining in the backlog, do you really want us to finish that? Can we focus on something new? There is new things coming, you know, and that depends on the collaboration with your client. If you work in outsourcing world, usually you don't have privilege always to talk with your client. You talk with someone who is between you and this usually can be a project manager or can be some other company, and they're only interested in the date, plan, and if you're delivering according to that. If you straight away from that, that's a big problem, yeah.
Well,
now there's Sonya hasn't been saying we'll give you space shortly, but because you have a lot. But anyway, there was a question about the dates as well, and the need. When we have a larger group of people involved, when we have dependencies, dates do become very important for a very specific reason. If we miss a date, there's a cascading effect on everything else. And we might have a lot of people who are dependent on something and to start their next step. And in those situations, it's perfectly reasonable to expect dates to hold, because otherwise it's a hell to pay. But it's easy to adjust for missing stuff. So we can test a little less, as long as it works and as long as it serves the most valuable purposes. We might skip a few details here and there. That's perfectly fine. And this is where Agile is a powerful approach, not in being better at estimation or being able to guess or whatever, but in the ability to deliver incremental stuff so that at the time of the date that we need to deliver, we have the best possible result. And we then ship that onward. And of course, we should communicate that it's a sensible thing for everybody. And so Agile can allow us to keep dates. Well, whatever date commitments we make, we have the best possible chance of meeting them. And then we don't trigger the cascading effects, negative effects. And so, yes.
Can I challenge you on that? When you say delivery
it's
date.
It's contextual. It's a contextual thing.
Let me ask you a question, okay? You're talking about missing date. Why would you miss date, okay? Can be.
I wouldn't want to miss a date.
No.
I absolutely don't want to miss a date.
No.
If I made a promise on a tape.
Let me ask you a proper question, okay? Let's say we said the 1st of December, okay? For example, yeah. I can achieve that date, okay? 1st of December, that's it. I have software there. The question is what I will have from original backlog by that date. That's a key, okay?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
what I'm saying is that not every feature in that backlog is equally important. If you know that you will not be able to deliver everything, you should ask your client, would you give me, let's say, 2 more months to deliver everything remaining, or do you want us to go with what we have now, bearing in mind that that's actually satisfy majority of your needs? Which one of these do you two want? You know, and that's when comes term MVP, and MVP is abused term so many times that because MVP means everything is must have, you know, that's not reality. Let's be honest.
No, I mean, yes, it's very abused, but what I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. And Ivan, I'll give you a space. Anyway.
To see what Sonya wanted to say something, just to give the
word.
Okay,
I'll pass.
Yeah, guys, it was so passionate. I didn't want to interrupt. So the question is, what are we doing if we don't have data and we need to provide a date? So why do you think your customers need a date? They need a realistic expectation. they are making decisions based on that date. There are some business costs and values that depend on that commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't have the data and there is no proper approach that we can use in order to provide an accurate answer to that question, I think the main concern that we should have at this moment is why don't we have the means to provide the accurate answer? It just need to sink in, and you need to realize, guys, that having an accurate answer to that question and making a proper future predictions depends on the stability of your system. It depends on do your managers push work into the process instead of teams pulling work from the process? Are you visualizing all of the work that is happening at the moment? Mm-hmm. Is it clear how much work do you have at this point? Is it exceeding your capacity? Does the demand exceeding your capacity? Is it possible for you guys to relieve overburden at this moment? Are you working till 5 a.m. in the morning? Are you working during the weekends?
Mm-hmm.
Do you limit work in progress? Once you start thinking about this, you will find the solutions of quite a lot of problems. You will find the solution of how can we relieve indeed the burnout in our team? How can we produce accurate predictions? How can we deliver value in a consistent, predictable manner? How can we keep our commitments? So if you don't have the data, just start simple. Start with visualizing all your work on a Kanban board. Limit your work in progress to match the capacity of your team, and pull data, pull new work at the moment that you have the capacity to do so. These are the 3 basic steps to establish and maintain a stable system. Once you have a stable system, or at least you make the effort to go there, you will be able to collect data and you will be able to start work with that data. Either you're using estimates or forecasts or whatever, you will have a stable system, predictable system that is going to produce accurate results. So if you don't have the data and you don't have the means to answer that question, think about your workflow. Think about how you're managing the flow of work and start from there. It wouldn't take more than 20 completed items afterwards to have accurate results out of your forecasts.
Yep.
People often totally underestimate is the importance of disciplined delivery. That, as you said, the stable system, that's one of the things that is totally underestimated. Agile software development is about establishing a stable, disciplined system. And a lot of organizations don't have anything like discipline in software development, unfortunately. So that makes estimation doubly hard.
Yeah, so the question is, because the clients want us to give a date, so to make an estimation and to give one date or something like that, and it comes to, is that estimation at the end a good estimation, or do we, as Zoran said, I will not miss the date, I will deliver you what you wanted by those days, but it depends, is the quality good? So did I cut the quality and I said, okay, this is it? Or should I be able to communicate with the client and then say, okay, I delivered most of the features, give me more time so I deliver the rest of them. I just wanted to put another poll on just to see how do people think about estimation when we're talking about, are they good, are they missed with companies. So just to see, there are multiple answers. So just to see, how do you feel about your estimation and your estimates when you do them? I'm launching the poll now.
I want
yeah, just
to completely explained. When I said you deliver by date, you start delivering most important stuff from that list.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about prioritized backlog, and you actually have deployment pipeline, you have a continuous integration, you have a quality assurance on the level that you can each sprint produce your quality results. You not start struggling with the technical debt and that kind of thing, because when you start to accumulate the technical debt, you even have more problems with all delivery. And I think what Petri was saying is this kind of stable, or Sonya mentioning this flow. It's not. It's eliminating waste, but having building in quality during development and controlling that quality is extremely important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sonya, there is a question for you. How to I don't know if you see the question.
Yeah. How to handle classes of service in Kanban boards, how to start using it, and which ones to start with. Let's say the problem is task switching, daily prioritization changes, which causes the whole team to have a clear picture of what we really do at the moment. All right, so classes of service categorize your work based on its priority. There are 4 classes of service, 4 default classes of service, let's say, that you can start with. You have an expedite class of service, fixed delivery date class of service, standard class of service, and intangible class of service. There should be explicit policies that are going to state how the different classes of service communicate with each other, how they interact with each other. For example, expedite class of service is the work with the highest priority. So your servers are down, there is a huge production problem that needs to be resolved right away. There is a policy saying there should be only 1 expedite tasks in progress at a time. This class, it is allowed to break all WIP limits, it's allowed to break any other rules. We need to stop working on whatever we're working, and we handle this right away. Keep in mind that this approach is generating flow depth. Flow depth means that you are taking time from another work in order to dedicate that time to an expedite task to make sure that it goes live as fast as possible. But you're accumulating flow depth because you're taking the time of something else that needs to be handled at this moment. That's why it's very important to make sure that there is only 1 expedite at the moment, at a time. And you need to be very careful about how do you categorize expedite tasks. Because I had a situation that all expedites were like the request from the CEO's wife. So you need to be very, very careful about what work is expedite. Then you have fixed delivery dates. Yeah, as Petri said, could be like anything that is really time sensitive, any deadlines that need to be met, or a commitment to a client as well. So you have a fixed delivery date, which is the next level of priority. Then you have standard work, which is pretty much everything else. And you have intangibles, which is maintenance, flow depth, and stuff like that. All of the classes of service need to be set at the moment that the work is scheduled in your to-do list, in your backlog. So it's a management thing to make sure that they categorize your work based on the impact they're going to have, either based on the cost of delay or market opportunities or risks or whatever. All the work need to be categorized using classes of service before it is put into the workflow. At the moment it is put into the workflow, the best thing you can do is to start working on different tasks on a first in, first out concept. So whatever goes in first, it goes out. Every time when you finish something, you put it on the next column in the Kanban board on the bottom. For example, if you're working on a development state, then you're finishing with something and it needs to move to the development done. So the quality assurance guys are ready to pull the work, it needs to go on the bottom. This means that all the work is going to be handled in the order it went into the workflow, and it is going to go out in the same order. Because if you don't have such policy in place, it's very common that people are going to pull the easy, the small work, and the more complex work, it is going to stay an age in the process. And when you leave work aging like this, you're accumulating flow debt, you're delaying the delivery, you're going to have quite some troubles once you decide to release the code, because it's going to be a really old code base that needs to be merged to the latest production code. Probably there will be quite some issues that are going to be introduced because of the old code base. So first in, first out is the best thing that you can do. Again, when it comes to classes of service, it is a prioritization approach before the work is going into the workflow. Once it is in the workflow, if it's not an expedite, or if there isn't any explicit reason how to interact, how the different classes of service interact with each other, then the best advice I can give you guys is first in, first out.
Cool. I will share just to share the results of the polling that we started. So just for you to see, we mentioned something regarding the percentage of correct estimates that we have. So we can see that most of the estimates are sometimes correct, and it's pretty much high, but we can see that even if we make an estimate to our clients as they want us to do, we are not always correct. And then we, as here says, we re-estimate frequently when we have the new information. So basically, if we were talking about forecasting and estimating. If we estimate something and then we collect the new data and then we re-estimate, is it forecasting? Could you say it like that?
Why would you estimate if you collect data? That's what I'm interested in.
No, I estimate at the beginning.
Yes, but once when you start collecting data, this is not estimation anymore. It's just, you know, your yesterday weather data. Based on that, you can do projection. And there was interesting question in the chat. What happens when the project start moving and you come across some problems, or let's say opposite way, you start getting you're getting better in things and you're doing things quicker. Depends how long is your project, by the way. What you should do, you should collect your data and you should revisit your projections and you be transparent with your client and communicate that. Yeah. And there is an interesting question from Alexander Djorovic, I think. He talks about how you can estimate on the big projects, you know, with lots of unknowns, lots of risks. You know, you have, I don't know, you have some people who are more on the junior level, have no experience. What the hell are you doing there? You know, it's so difficult. It's a question about, are the estimation really helps there? And I would reiterate what I said before. Estimation as a process can help team better understand requirements, because it provokes discussion, especially if someone sees that as a big thing and someone sees as a small thing. You can always challenge and ask them why they think that way, and you share knowledge. But generally speaking, about projection, delivery date, that's why we're talking about estimation and here. And we didn't even touch story points. If we introduce story points in all this discussion, I think we will go wild completely. Yeah.
Should we do it?
Story points is one of most interesting, but at the same time, the terms which people really don't get. You know, I tried so many times to explain story points, relative estimations, but people still don't get that. You know.
Yeah, guys.
And I think
when it comes to forecasting a complex project with quite a lot of variability, yeah, again, the importance of collecting data here. I'm emphasizing on it. So normally we use Monte Carlo simulations. The simulations rely on large number of random trials based on your past throughput data to predict the throughput for the future frame. So you define the start date and the number of tasks, and the simulation will provide a range of delivery dates and the probabilities coming with each range. So if you don't feel comfortable working with ranges, you can go with just 85th percentile, let's say, or 95th percentile. So for any day in the future, it will use the throughput of a random day in the past to simulate how many work items are likely to get done. The simulation is repeated tens of thousands of times before the results are presented in the form of a probability distribution, with the percentiles increasing from left to right. And if, for example, we have a backlog of 20 tasks, we can see that, for example, on 1st of November or 1st of December, there is an 85% probability to finish on that specific date. And the further we go with the time, the greater the certainty of completing all tasks. But again, it's all about stable systems and having data on your side. And with regards to the question, what if we have estimated at the very beginning and then we started collecting data? In my experience, switching from an old approach of guesswork, intuition, judgment, and stuff like this, to a data-driven approach, like making forecasts, it meets a lot of resistance. People are really not comfortable about switching and start trusting the data and start looking into the data and not spending the time to think about what could happen based on their past projects, like in an intuition. So our best advice is keep both the approaches. Estimate your work and produce probabilistic forecasts at the same time. Because producing probabilistic forecast is a matter of looking into your charts and just writing down the numbers. You can still spend the time to estimate your work. You can still use your old approach. But in parallel, add also into that approach, add the probabilistic forecasts in there. Leave them both. Let it sink in and observe in time what approach works best. And at some point, I can guarantee you that you're going to just get rid of estimation on your own, not because they're not as accurate as the probabilistic forecast, but also they are much more time consuming. Yeah.
Maybe you can also share, afterwards we can share some of the techniques that you use and your company use when it comes to forecasting and when it comes to the idea of probabilistic thinking.
Yes, of course.
We can share with everybody just so they have tools which they can use when they have data and they can forecast the things. You mentioned that you used the word that estimation is, let's say, a guess without any, let's say, relevant data, right?
That's the main difference between estimation and forecast.
Would you, Petri, agree? Because I think you were mentioning something a bit different when it comes to your view of the estimation.
Sorry, I was looking at the chat and just posting there. I missed the point. Sorry.
Yeah, I just
failure bow.
No, you're answering questions on the chat. Would you agree that estimation is a guess? It's something that we use without any relevant data, and it's just that, like.
So, I'd like to keep those two things separate: estimate and a commitment.
Yep.
And estimates change all the time. As the thing that we are estimating changes, as we build more stuff and our perception of that changes, so it will change all the time. Commitments may not change, but we may have a conflict between an estimate and a commitment. We might find out that the estimate has grown so much bigger because we've learned there's so much more work but that we will not be able to deliver on the commitment. And that should lead to a conversation where we start evaluating what we need to do, whether we change the date or commitment, or whether we find better ways of doing so that we can deliver on that commitment, on the meaningful, the valuable bits of that commitment. But estimate should be a transparent number that can change as we go along. If we need estimates, I mean, if we have a lot of small items, we have a stable system, we have stable kind of work, we should give up estimation in, you know, start using data. But it's always that, why are we estimating? What do we need to actually achieve that drives how we treat the situations? And it may mean if we have a contractual boundary, and this is something that was asked in the task, the contract might say that we don't have a flexibility. It might say that you have to deliver exactly this thing. I've never seen a good requirements document that would be so explicit that there wouldn't be any flexibility or that, you know, it would be so clear anyways. But this is delivered on this date for this amount of money. And if that's not possible, we need change management. We need to highlight the situation, bring it up, and renegotiate the contract. If the customer comes up with a new requirement, we write a change request, and then we decide how much more money we will charge and how much the timelines are changed. Agile, for some reason, a lot of people think that Agile is a license for customers to add scope without influencing cost and timelines. That is ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. If they want more, it will take more time. If they want less, it will take less time. But the contract is the thing that defines how we collaborate, and we need to manage that contract all the time. We might ask, and this is a common question, that a common response is when people ask me this question, well, what do we do if the customer wants more or changes their amount of blah, 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 blah? I would ask, what do you do in traditional? In the traditional way of building software, what do you do when you recognize that you can't deliver or things change? You manage change. You write a change request and you decide what it is. Why would you not use that in Agile?
Can I suggest, there are lots of questions here. I think we were talking a lot. I think we should focus on the questions. I would love to answer some of these questions from the audience. There was one, Sonya, about Monte Carlo, which I think it will be good to explain. I would like to add as well, when you do prediction on Monte Carlo, would you put start date as, if you want, for example, from today to look in the future, you put start date as today rather than going in the past, yeah?
Absolutely. It's a future prediction. Monte Carlo simulation is a tool to make future predictions. It's not a tool to evaluate what has happened in the past.
Yeah, but this is from today. So I got a question, interesting question about when I'm presenting a simulation. Someone says to me, okay, great, you said 1st of November, okay? So what about if I had 2 more people? What Monte Carlo will say in that scenario? And I said, you know.
You are changing the environment.
Of course.
You are changing the environment. So it's possible that Monte Carlo is not going to produce the exact accurate results because it doesn't have the past performance of that new environment to work on. So, but as I mentioned, as long as your system is stable, it doesn't matter how many people are involved or how many people leave. As long as your WIP is consistent and the average age of WIP is consistent, as long as your workflow is consistent and stable, you will be able to produce accurate results from Monte Carlo.
Yeah, but based on that, there is a question. Sorry, just let me just add this. There was a question about
should
we use Monte Carlo, should we include only requirements from backlog, or should we use buffers for bugs and something like that?
No buffers should be used. All of this is based on past performance data. We don't add any assumptions to it. It is taking into consideration the variability of our workflow. So no buffers. And the question of, do you need to only include stories? If you would like to produce a simulation and a prediction for user stories, then you only add user stories. If you have a variability, variety of types of work, then you include everything.
Okay.
But we need data about how many bugs we usually generate per new stories and things like that that are driven into the Monte Carlo. Well, it depends on what your model is and what your reality is. If you have bugs in the past, you will have bugs in the future, and should be accounted for. Otherwise, you have a crappy model, and of course, you will not get good results out of that.
But if you have a history and show the tool shows you that you as a developer, you are, let's say you developer, sorry, as a team, you're fixing 10 bugs in average per sprint, you can certainly take this into consideration when you say, okay, besides all these stories and technical tasks, I would expect that number in average bugs.
Yep.
So you can take
Yep,
this into
absolutely.
consideration, that kind of thing. Yeah. There was,
Yeah.
sorry, Ivan, can you read some of these questions? Because there are quite a few interesting ones.
Yeah.
There was a bidding for project, which I think it's interesting one. So what about if you bid for project? I think that's the last one.
There is, if you have a bid for project and work, estimation really important. How can you estimate work behind?
Can I say one thing about bidding to a contract? That is a business decision. That is not a technical decision. And that's just, again, estimate versus commitment. We've been part of bidding situations where estimate says 4 months of work for a normal team. We sell it for 3 months with the knowledge completely that we just underbid it by a month, at least in terms of the work volume. And that was a business decision we made. There's always uncertainty or risk. Estimates don't include everything. They don't include any information that will come into reality after the contract has been made. But we may still make a commitment that includes those things, so we guess. But there's a difference between, well, and every time you answer to a contract, you're making a business decision, and that includes more than just the estimates. Do we want to favor this customer? Do we provide them discounts on something? How risky are they? Are they going to pay us on time? Do we like these people? Do we not like this? Do we even want to win the bidding race? Or if we win it, then we put a price so high that if we win it, we will still work with that, but we don't want to win because we don't like them. So there's a premium for not liking. And so whatever your decisions are, I just want to emphasize contract negotiations are business decisions, commitments as an organization. Estimates are technical feedback into that decision.
Alexander asked, I see that data can be used in case when we have changes. Environments change in terms of people and as well as improving software. So as I understand, we can rely on data then?
Yes, you can use the data when there are changes in the environment. What is important here is to keep the variability in your process, in your lead times, in your throughput, the same as before. So no matter if you have more people, less people, new people, old people, as long as you're delivering value in a consistent manner and you keep it that way, you can rely on your data.
Mm-hmm.
Sonya, maybe can we just add a little bit more explanation? I think.
Yes, of course.
You can.
So when I talk about keeping,
just let me just help a little bit here. Maybe you can explain about cycle time, lead time, efficiency, flow efficiency, and that things, and WIP limit. That's why is that important, because Monte Carlo is using that, and it doesn't matter if you had far more people and you have the same average cycle time, and flow efficiency is the same. Don't see any difference. Maybe that can help people to understand this. Okay.
Of course. All right. So cycle time is the total time that work needs from the moment it enters the workflow till the moment it exits the workflow. So cycle time is the time while the work is in progress. Lead time is the time from the very beginning of the request to the very end when it's delivered to the customer. So when we talk about lead times, we talk about how much time does the customer wait from the moment they request something until the moment they receive it. Well, cycle time is our internal, the time that we spent working on something. So normally cycle time, lead time equals cycle time plus the time in the backlog, normally. When it comes to WIP, work in progress, this is the amount of tasks that can be in progress at the same time. So all the work that is currently in progress that you've started working on, this is work in progress. WIP is the number of tasks in progress. WIP limit is the limit over that number. So if you have 5 people in your team and everyone works on 2 tasks at the same time, you can put a WIP limit of 10 tasks. If someone tries to push more work, they wouldn't be able to because you have reached your WIP limit. And something needs to be finished, something needs to go out from the workflow in order to take the new work in. This approach is extremely effective to make sure that you don't get overburdened and you don't switch the context all the time, which is a major source of inefficiency, and you don't abandon work at the same time. So you work on the exact number, maximum number of items at a time that fits to your capacity. That's a WIP limit. Throughput is the number of tasks that have been finished. So on a weekly or daily, weekly or monthly basis. So let's say that this month we have finished 10 tasks. Next month or the previous month we finished 8 tasks. So when I talk about, one more metric, it's the average age of WIP. Average age of WIP and cycle time is the same thing. Only cycle time is measured against the completed work, and average age of WIP is the time that our work in progress has already spent. So this is work in progress, that is still in progress, and we measure the time from the very beginning of the whole of the work until now. So when I talk about stable system, there are 2 major factors that play a role here. Consistency when it comes to WIP and consistency when it comes to average age of WIP. If your WIP is consistent and your average age of WIP is consistent, you are maintaining a stable system. And when you're maintaining a stable system, you will be able to produce accurate results. So back to the question, it doesn't really matter how many people are working. Are there new old people? Are you losing people? Are you adding more people? As long as you maintain a stable system, your WIP is consistent, so you keep your WIP limits, your average age of WIP is consistent. For example, as I mentioned earlier, if you manage the work in first in, first out approach, you are maintaining a stable system. And the more stable your system is, the more accurate forecasts it's going to produce. Did I make it clear, guys?
Yep.
Yeah, and it left the big thing unsaid. If you don't have that stability, then data will be less and less valuable or less and less useful.
Absolutely.
But that leaves questions like, how justified is the uncertainty or the instability? A lot of organizations are in unstable systems because of organizational design. No one has put in the effort to make them reliable systems. So, that is a major area where a lot of
It's a great time to start thinking about this.
Yes, and so if you don't have that stability, then there should be an organization, systemic thinking starting or going on behind it to see why are we having all this uncertainty on these changes. But sometimes they are justified, sometimes they aren't.
Yep. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to see if we have some other questions that we maybe skipped. There is one with the technical depth. How will it will be part of the backlog if we do not do estimate. Let me try to find it. We will be answering all the questions if we left some on our app on Matchabout afterwards. How will technical debt ever go to the top of the backlog with no estimates approach? That is the question. I think we didn't. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So yeah, I mentioned that. I can see that might have been confusing to other participants because the original question was only to the panelists, but I answered to everybody. But anyway, so technical debt, it's one of those things. I see two major approaches. I mean, there's more than that. There's more than that. One of them is be transparent. That is, provide information as to what technical debt there is, what is the business impact of that technical debt, not just provide a list of things we'd like to do, but why is it relevant to fix those things? How much is money being spent on those reasons? And what would be the ROI of each of those things? And that puts them in line with all the other business requests from the customer, whoever that is, the business. Because if they say, if you build this thing X, we will get 10,000 euros a month or 100,000 euros a month. But if you can put a technical saying, we are spending 100,000 on this thing every month because we don't have the automation in place. If we do the automation for 50,000, we're going to save that in 2 weeks. Or whatever it is, that we make a business calculation for every technical debt. And then we start working with the business. How do we make the most money for this organization as a whole, including the technical debt? The second approach is don't tell them. You simply, as an organization, you take responsibility for your technical quality and you take at least a reasonable amount of capacity to work on the technical debt over time. And you tell your customer only a lesser amount of work. You don't show the whole capacity, just the capacity that they can actually responsibly use. And you might say that's a kind of a sneaky way of doing things, but some customers kind of deserve that because they don't treat you fairly. You need to protect yourself. So sometimes you have to go that approach. In the long run, you should be able to increase the amount of capacity to the customer, and so on, and do it. Now, the second one doesn't always work, or it maybe feel weird for people, but I mean, there's a lot of unethical stuff going on in customer relationships anyway. So not telling them everything that is still in their best interest of doing may not be the worst thing that the people are doing in that relationship anyways. But again, these are business decisions, should never be done solely by the developers. There should be business people around it knowing what's going on. And like as a vendor, if we're delivering stuff to our customers, we should have our organization having an understanding how we relate to the customer, how we're interacting with the customer. So we shouldn't be just the developers. But there are other approaches, but I think those are the two major ones that I'd start with.
Okay, can I add something to, or put some other question? Okay, so technical debt, accumulation technical debt can slow you down over time. Yeah, so you have less and less stable system. Yeah, and at some point you start delivering less, and that's, you know, if you don't have all this quality assurance, everything what we said before, if you're not paying your technical debt the same way you pay your financial debt, you may end up with delivering less and less and less and less. And at some point, you have less opportunity to go in front of client and saying, "Oh, by the way, you know, you just deliver less." You know, you need to kind of be more transparent in the sense, yeah. It's question if you start project. When you say stable, there are so many things about stable. For me, the stable means as well that you're controlling your technical debt, your quality as well. You know, if you, I have so many questions about, should we do code reviews? Should we do, I don't know, write some automated tests? Can we hire a few more manual testers, you know, and that kind of thing, you know. And I think overall, there is no estimation who can help you, or forecasting who can help you with this kind of stuff if you start ignoring. And I think that's another important aspect about technical debt.
And I want to emphasize, I always prefer the first method, which is the transparent, over the second method, which is sneaky.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have more questions.
We have
And there's one for Sonya.
Yeah, this is for Sonya regarding Little's law. And we can answer this question, and then it's about time that we organized for this panel. So let's
Okay.
talk about this.
Well, Little's law links the three basic flow metrics: throughput, lead time, and work in progress in one formula. Lead time equals work in progress divided by throughput. Little's law only deals with average values, but for this equation to hold water, the following assumptions have to apply for the time period we are investigating. The average age, the average arrival rate has to be equal to the average departure rate. All tasks entering the system need to exit the system as soon as they are completed. There shouldn't be any large variances in WIP between the beginning and the end of the time period in question. And the average age of WIP, as I already mentioned, should remain the same, neither increasing nor decreasing. So basically, Little's law is not influenced by practically anything else. As these assumptions become more accurate, the process behavior becomes more and more predictable. But in order for the law to be valid, we need to have all of these assumptions valid. But even if that's the case, Little's law is still a relationship of averages, as each component in the relationship is an average. And this calculation will produce an average. And we cannot make any probabilistic forecasts using this approach. Making predictions based on average can land you in some hot water. Forecasts based on averages would make sense only if you know something about the shape of the underlying distribution of your data. If you don't, there is no way to associate any percentile with the average value. There can be exactly 50% or much more than 50% or significantly less than 50% chance of that goal being achieved. So if we don't know the distribution, then we cannot give a probability of where the average falls. And if we don't know a probability, then we cannot make a forecast. Little's law is about examining what has happened in the past and analyzing the predictability of our system. The power of the law rests on the assumptions behind it. It provides a guide of a set of policies to adopt in order to maintain a stable system. So instead of making predictions, adopt the Little's law assumptions as explicit policies to drive predictability and stability in your workflow.
Okay, that's very nicely put. Thanks for that.
Can I take the last question there?
Yeah, sure.
So the question was, how to use data in a startup if it's new and unstable? If not possible, what is your suggestion? My suggestion is look at value. Ignore effort estimate. Just prioritize based on value and work on the most important thing at all times. Try to make it small so that you only do, if any idea, only the most valuable bits. Startups are a very different reality to most their software development. And the only thing that really matters there is value, not cost, as long as the cost is small. If it's a big, it's too costly because as a startup, you need to work in small and fast iterations to test your customer hypothesis and build market. And you have to be very responsive. So anything that is costly may be difficult to do, unless that is the valuable thing. Because the only thing that matters is the costly thing. So I do recommend, like, talking about data, I do recommend collecting data, and you may find that you actually have a stable system underneath all of that change still. You can have a stable system even if the requirements change it, but if the system delivering on those requirements is stable, you can start using data to supplement, even drive your predictions of future. But remember, the backlog may change as you learn more about your product. But value is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's more challenging than anything else because what is value? That is a very difficult question, much more difficult than how long it will take.
But don't you think that it's for startup is more, is less important the delivery date? It's more important. Is there
Absolutely.
is there a business there, and you should use you should kind of try as quickly as possible to validate your hypothesis or idea which you have.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what I mean by value. Value is delivering something, making something change, make a customer, make a feature, sell it to someone, get revenue, prove your market worth. All those things drive success, potential success, but may not be relevant. I mean, are more relevant to consider than you know, estimates or stability of the system.
I just want to add something on the, I mean, think here. We're talking about collecting data and data-driven things and this kind of stuff. It's not, let's be clear here. It's not, data is not the most important thing. The most important thing is you're delivering value to your client, yeah? If you need to do some kind of projection, prediction, yeah, if you can use data and what we said before, try to stabilize your system, yeah? Try to collect your data, try to use that to get a more accurate prediction and control when you deliver, yeah? And I think that's important. I don't want people to take from this panel that we're talking about data. I mean, it's better to use data than to guesstimate. Let's put this way. But in the end of the day, most important thing for us is to deliver value to our clients, whoever our client is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
We will be sharing also some, as I said, details regarding the tools which you can use on MatchAbout. We will be sharing also a cool platform which you can use and try. I know Zoran is using it, and I know Sonya is also using it because she is the one that created it. So we will be sharing that as well with some additional discount to you all. Just you can also try to use it and see if some of this which we mentioned can be used in your company. Also, if we have some other questions that we did not answer, we will be doing that also on MatchAbout. I don't know if you guys want to add something else, but I would really like to thank you for participating in this. I think we did answered a lot of questions. I haven't paid for him for this. No, she didn't. I just she although she gave me a free trial, but it's free, so I tried it and it's awesome. Before this, I didn't have the opportunity to look at those data and see how things could be better. So she didn't, but we have a thumbs up also for this platform from Nevena. Okay, so do you want to add something, or should we summarize with what Zoran said?
I just want to say thank you for being here again. It was lovely being here. Great question, great conversation. Thank you, Sonya, Zoran, Ivan. Really nice to see you again. Hopefully soon again.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. It was a great pleasure to spend some time with you, and stay safe.
Okay. Stay at home and see you hopefully soon.
Stay at home and we will talk to you, send you all the details after it. Thanks. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.